Tuesday, September 16th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. 'Tis the season to mark an X, folks. But before that happens, with the elections happening, there's lots to talk about. We have a parent panel for you today. They will weigh in on what issues matter to them and their families. Okay, it is voting season, right? There's lots to think about. We've got the provincial election coming up. The Brit just dropped, and also, obviously, the municipal elections, too. So the way I look at this panel today is when it comes to issues, there's going to be layers, and sometimes the layers overlap. The same as what we did with the whole round with the federal election, but we're looking now. So a lot of it, I think, will touch on the province and provincial issues, but then also it's municipal stuff, too. So I didn't want to kind of separate them for today's show. We've got a bunch of election coverage in the coming weeks that we'll be sharing with you. But for today, if you're listening to the show, if you want to talk about issues that matter to you, if you're a parent out there, you can get in touch with us. So we'll open the phone line shortly if you do want to give us a call. But for now, though, the text line is open, 709-327-8206. Emails, thesignal@cbc.ca. We'll have a little bit of a chat. We've got a couple people to call. And also, as you're listening, if the spirit moves you, you can feel free to give us a shout as well. Joining me in the studio, Luke Quinton is back. How you doing?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks for coming back. So we'll do the whip around. Give us like the best intro of condensed intro of yourself.
Hey, I'm a person who...
And a parent.
I'm a parent,
there
yes. That's very important. Parent of a young kid in elementary school and live in downtown St. John's. And I'm a writer by trade. I make podcasts.
Yeah, lots of stuff.
Think about city issues. Yeah.
Cool. Yolande Potty-Sherman is here and back. Thank you
Hi.
for coming in. How you doing?
Pretty good, thanks.
Tell folks about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a parent of a 3-year-old who is in regulated childcare, and I am a geographer at Memorial University. I specialize in population and how it intersects with place. And I'm also the chair of Childcare Now Newfoundland and Labrador, which is a nonprofit organization advocating for expanding high-quality, affordable, and inclusive childcare for all families.
Excellent. And Audrey Wade is back. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
Tell folks about yourself.
So I'm Audrey. I am a parent, and I'm an early childhood educator, and I also cross sectors into career development. So big focus for things that are happening in the province right now, and keen interest in all of those.
Yeah. So I guess the jump-off question then, like, election season, like I said in my introduction there, municipal, provincial. So let's talk about the first kind of crack at what's on your radar in this fall election season. That can be municipal, provincial, both, issue related and not being specific on either. Like, Andrea, what about you? Like, start with you.
So I think the biggest thing for me is education. Yeah. I had a son who just graduated high school a year ago, still trying to figure out the pieces of what next steps are. And from the career development perspective, I think we could be doing more in our education system for folks who are about to graduate or who are trying to figure out what life looks like beyond post-secondary, or beyond secondary, I should say.
Secondary. Yolande.
Yeah, so I still think we are, we've made really good strides in terms of advancing early learning and childcare and how available it is, but we know that there's still a long way to go. And so this is kind of really something that is on the top of my mind as we head into this election, just how crucial having access to high quality, inclusive, affordable childcare is for solving many problems. Really, it is multi-solving because it's about families' affordability, right? It's about the money that they have to put into housing, right? To support their own housing security. If they're not spending money on childcare, they can put that money towards other things that go back into to their family budget. So it really kind of touches on a lot of things, whether it's housing, whether it's food security. Childcare is critically important. And there was a recent Environics poll came out last week that said that 4 in 5 Canadians support the idea that high quality, affordable childcare should be available to families that need it, which is really great. And the number 2 reason that people say when you ask them, well, why? It's because it supports affordability for families. So really, really crucial as we head into this election.
And what have you, like for the parties, what are you, like, big differences, big gaps between what you've heard so far and their approach to childcare?
Yes, we're obviously the Liberals have had kind of a long runway, right?
Yep.
They're the party that can say, like, they put in $10 a day childcare. They've made some really important improvements in terms of introducing a wage grid for early childhood educators, introducing a medical benefits plan, and they are working on space creation. They obviously have the difficult task of being in charge of a really complex portfolio where there's, it's not only needs to be space creation, it has to be high quality. You have to recruit more people in the workforce. You have to change like decades and decades of undervaluing of what early childhood educators do and the work that they perform. And so they've had, have a difficult task. I think what I'd really love to see is I'd love to see the NDP and the PCs really hold the Liberals' feet to the fire this election in terms of compensation for early childhood educators, and really hold them to their feet to the fire to say we need to introduce a pension program. It's something that the NDP has come out really early and said they're in favor of. The PCs at different times have said that the Education Critic has said they're in favor of this. So I'd love to see that really take center stage. And just to kind of point out that in the federal election, everybody just talked about tariffs.
Yeah.
So childcare didn't really get any time in the spotlight as a policy discussion. So I'm really hoping that we don't have, the Churchill Falls election and then the other issues like education, post-secondary, the things that we're probably here to talk about kind of get shuffled off. So I want to see, issues of education across the board really at the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think a great point on the federal election. And from the shows I did here, and it's so much of it, like we tried to talk about these other issues, but then you still had that tariff, the Donald Trump, the United States issue, wondering about the economy, and that seemed ever present when there's other things that could have easily, that deserved a lot of attention. And even on like shows like this, we were talking about it, still wasn't part of the bigger, I guess, zeitgeist of the moment. Luke, what about yourself? What are you looking at, thinking about?
I'm looking at 2 issues, and I think there's some overlap between the municipality, City St. John's, especially where I live, and the province. I think safe streets are a huge issue for parents in the St. John's metro, and I think it's been a real struggle to kind of move forward on that issue. We can go into it in depth, but the issue that I think sticks out to me provincially is housing. And there's a lot of overlap here, between the provincial responsibility and the municipal responsibility. And I think they aren't working very well together. And I think they're not taking the housing issue seriously. We're like the province is building one building in Pleasantville, and I don't even know if it's broken ground yet.
Yeah.
That's not a serious, attempt to solve this crisis.
So then as we move into these couple of elections, right? We've talked education and thinking about work and that side of it, early or childcare, talking ECEs, safe streets, housing. How do we feel about this moment we're in of getting things done in the way they should be when you have anywhere from $700 million to $1 billion deficit rolling with the province, plus the debt that's ongoing, thinking about the economy, which is, impacted partially by tariffs and the way we're looking at things, even though we're in a Build Canadian time. What kind of a moment, I ask this a lot, but what kind of a moment are we in right now for like trying to move ahead to maybe thrive? Like how difficult do we see this being?
Can I go there? I like.
Please do.
We're obviously not in a good financial position.
Yeah.
But government doesn't. They acknowledge it when it's convenient, and then they skip over that fact when it's money they want to spend. Should they have expanded the highway from Team Gushu to the Southern Shore for $50 million? We're bankrupt, right? Is that money well spent? Talk to the people who tell you that it's going to cut 90 seconds or 2 minutes off of someone's commute and increase sprawl, which will cost us more money down the road. We're not thinking smart. It's like that's a political decision. It's not one that's based on best practices. So do we have the money we'd like to have? No. but we have some money, and are we using it well? Also no. So we need to focus, where the limited resources we have should go. And people need to, splash some cold water in their face, think about like what is achievable and where's the best use of putting these funds.
So do you hear that often, though, from on any level? Like how often do you hear that approach from folks running, no matter what the party or what the level, because the decisions that get made are the ones that have been made, and yet here we're having this discussion.
It's really hard to get sort of objective information and use that to make decisions here. We have a small population. There's a limited number of experts. Some of them are tangled up in government. Maybe they're taking contracts. Maybe they can't speak publicly about these things. It's really hard to be well informed. Journalists will tell you it's hard to get candid conversation on the radio. It's hard to get people to speak candidly like they would away from the mic.
Oh, look.
On mic.
Yeah, 14 years and counting at CBC, and the number of times where I've had conversations privately and then told from, you name the range, even recently, from parents to just folks in different positions out there, and they'll tell me a bunch of stuff. I'm like, would you like to talk about that somewhere else with a microphone perhaps? They're like, no, I couldn't. and I understand why, because there's issues with sometimes because you can't professionally or whatever else, but there's always that extra side bit there of like wanting some of this information out, which could be healthy for conversation.
And when you don't speak what you know in public, there's a gap that forms, and then people guess. People are like, well, it must be due to X, which has nothing to do with the problem that we're talking about.
You've lived in a few places. Do you think we're extra special at guessing in Newfoundland and Labrador, or is it a global thing or a North American thing? How because from where you've lived, as you've lived in the States for a bit, you've been around the guess bit of it. Are we different here or the same as everywhere else?
We love to guess. We love to speculate.
Yeah.
We're not afraid of a few conspiracy theories. But I do think it's because of the vacuum.
Yeah.
And I think people are more reluctant to talk here because of practical concerns. Like they're concerned they'll lose out on a contract, and they're concerned they'll offend their neighbor who has some kind of connection that they need. So people are in a very difficult place. And I do think it's not like that in bigger centers, bigger islands, bigger places.
Yeah, well, the size for Newfoundland and Labrador with the population, it is it's true. This is even though the landmass is large, the community and the communities are small, and it's me and you could easily get into it today on the air, and I will see you at Sobeys probably at 5 p.m. today.
Absolutely, which is cool. Like people should be. It's good to meet your enemies,
or Dominion or Coleman's or Walmart or Costco, but one of them, right? Not.
Yeah, and sometimes, we've all done it where, you've seen someone you didn't really want to run into and you turn your head and try to duck down another aisle. It can be a sensitive place to live in that way.
Yeah.
But I think overall, it's okay to, sort of agree to disagree.
Yeah.
But if we can't have the candid comment in the first place or the critique aired out, sometimes I feel like it's basically professors at the university who are well informed and are able, because of their tenure, to speak publicly, and basically, occasionally a doctor. But I mean, everyone else keeps it very close to their chest, and maybe they have to.
Yeah, hence why a lot of times you'll hear it'll be so and so representing the union, because it can be very difficult to get someone rank and file to talk. Right, so that's just to kind of explain to folks how some of that will work. Both of you, any thoughts on want to build on what Luke's saying, or?
I think there's lots to say, actually.
Yeah, there's lots.
It is a small community, let's be honest, right? And people are attached to workplaces, and sometimes that can lead you in a position to be able to speak or not to speak. So I think that's part and parcel, as well as other things that, may affect what you say publicly. I like what Luke said, because I think government could do more work on spending smarter. I mean, we do have few dollars, and holding accountability to practice is, I think, where we need to be. So what that looks like, to be able to speak to what's happened or what could potentially happen with funds. But, spending smarter is where we need to be. And if I could use the example of the $10 a day childcare program, we have definitely developed spaces in this city and beyond across the province. But the reality is I'm connected to a lot of parent groups, and parents are still struggling to find childcare. So have we done work? Absolutely. Do we have work to do? Absolutely. So there's still room for spending, and there's still room for improvements of things that need to happen. And again, like if I look at the education system, there's been cuts to teaching units, there's been cuts to assistants, there's been cut to resources and supplies. So are we doing the best job that we could potentially do in those situations? I think there's room for real conversation there.
Has the Education Accord given you any? We just did yesterday's show on the Education Accord. The co-chairs were in studio. Part of it was talking about the Radio Canada reporting by my colleague Patrick Butler about some of the source work being 15 sources, I think it was, references made up or non-existent. We talked through that, but then we also talked about the depth and the voices and the 110 recommendations, the 400 and something pages of the report. Has any, where does that sit with you on what's been put out so far?
I think that the biggest piece for me is that there's an appetite to move forward.
Okay.
There's an appetite to do good work, and that, when you sit around roundtables that have done the work in an educational accord, then it's time to move on it. My worst fear ever, as somebody who works in community capacity, is things that get shelved.
Yeah.
So keep the conversation active, keep it going. We have the accord, let's move on it.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder how big that shelf is in Confederation building for all the years of governments and all the reports that must be sitting there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Might be a couple rooms. Anyways, Yolande, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, just you bring up the Education Accord, and I have a real sense of like my heart hurts over this Education Accord. I had really, have really high hopes. I think there's probably some great stuff in the document. Unfortunately, now it's all mired in controversy. Like we're in what is probably the most boring episode of Black Mirror ever, where the Accord recommends increasing AI use in education, and then falls prey to the fake references. So that really makes me sad to think about how many hours people spend engaging with the Accord chairs. Childcare Now Newfoundland and Labrador, we submitted a written submission that we spent meticulously referenced. No AI was used. We submitted it, and it's not in the reference list. So just certain things, but I do struggle with the Education Accord. But I really want to see the conversation move forward, and we have spent such a long time going through all the consultations on it. I don't want to see it dropped.
You're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today, it's a parent panel, and we're talking about issues, right? Municipal, provincial issues that will be coming up, that we're thinking about anyways, as we look for who to vote for, whether that's in our district, whether that's in our community. And this is a Newfoundland and Labrador conversation. Parents out there, if you're listening to us, and folks, we've got lots of content coming around discussions and ways to get in touch. But for today, it's a parent panel. And if you are a parent or grandparent, if you want to get in touch with us, if there's something that you want to talk about, an issue or issues that matter to you, whether it's provincially, municipally, or just something that cuts across all of it in your life, give us a call, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206. The Signal at cbc.ca for emails. We've got Jillian Croak on the line. Hi, Jillian. How you doing?
Hi, I'm great, Adam. Thanks so much for having me.
No, thanks for coming on the show. Give folks an introduction of yourself, and we'll talk about some of the things you're thinking about.
Yeah, so I'm a parent of two children, one that's in elementary school and the other that's in primary. I'm also a member of my child's school council, so dealing with a lot of the school concerns and parent concerns in the area. And I have spent numerous hours over the last couple of years with some concerned parents and the school council trying to advocate for some better conditions in my children's school and the catchment zone.
So what better conditions are you advocating for? What would you like to see?
Our biggest concern right now, and my children go to the PWC catchment, which, of course, is Larkall Academy, St. Andrews, Leary's Brook Junior High, and then, of course, PWC. So the biggest thing that we're seeing right now in those schools is overcrowding and the increasing population. we've been sounding the alarm for a long time, and there just is no reprieve. In the classrooms right now, we're seeing classes being combined where there's two teachers teaching two different classes in the same room at the same time, because they just literally have run out of space.
Two teachers in two classrooms at the same time. And what's the student number roughly on that? Do you know?
Well, my child was in one of those classes, which actually ended up being broken up because there was excess students, but there was 36 at one point with two teachers. So you can imagine those classrooms and the environments can get quite loud. And, just not conducive to great learning, especially for some kids that may have some neurodiverse concerns. And it's hard on the teachers as well. But we're also seeing the loss of the library. So this has happened before a couple of years ago, and it breaks my heart to see my kids not being able to access a library because they've run out of space. Leary's Brook Junior High, kids are not allowed to go to the cafeteria if they're not on school lunch. So they have to sit in their seats if they're not allowed to leave the school. So a day where they're not able to even get up and move around at lunchtime, it's really sad. So, overcrowding leads to increase in bullying, leads to increased absenteeism, decreased comfort, which no doubt will reduce success in our education system.
Yeah, that's everything we talked about in yesterday's show, talking about the education accord, right? About you're highlighting all the issues. So you're talking there's overcrowding, absenteeism, bullying. These are things that thing is supposed to eventually start to tackle. When you've reached out to different levels, or whether it's the provincial government or an MHA or different parties, what have you heard back?
We have heard, well, of course, there's the new school that's being built for the Kim Terrace area. So the new school is coming. Great, that's exciting. But it's not fixing the problem right now. As we speak, there are classes being combined. There are classes in the basement. There are children not able to get up at lunchtime. That is a concern that parents have right now, and children that may never avail of this new school. So we have heard, the new school's coming. That doesn't fix anything. We've heard that with pre-K, we're hopefully going to resolve some of these concerns by, adding additional teachers and different units. But again, adding different units to a school with overcrowding doesn't add additional space. And we know that other schools in the areas have extra space. So to me, there's a lot of answers being thrown out, but none of them make sense, really, when there are solutions that can be done. And none of the people that we've reached out to have ever accepted our invitation to come into the school with parents while school is in session to see what the overcrowding looks like. Everyone, is okay to send an email from afar, or go to the school during the summer when there's no other parent representatives around. But we really want to invite some of our politicians into the school, staff and admin at NL Schools and Department of Education. Let's look at these concerns together while school's in session.
Well, with an election coming, if you're going to get folks to want to go somewhere and do something, perhaps now is an ideal time for them to come in and check things out.
Right. And we talk about crime. We spend so much time talking about crime, so much time talking about health. Both of those things you can't talk about without speaking about education and the level of education that we're providing our kids. So it's really, those things all had to be tied together. The other issue that I kind of have as a parent, and it's made more be of a municipal concern, but I live currently in the Kim Terrace area, which you may know is approximately the population of Deer Lake. And parents have been advocating, or citizens and residents have been advocating for better conditions in the area, just better facilities. There's no walking trail up here, for example. There's no bike trails. So for a fairly new community with such a large population, again, we're talking about health, we're talking about crime. We can't talk about any of those things without physical activity. So we're trying to really enforce opportunities for people to get outside, to be active, to reduce stress, to improve health, and sometimes, just making streets safer in the area, because we've noticed a lot of unsafe streets, which, parents are concerned. They keep their children in, and again, it reduces activity, and they're on their tablets and whatnot, and we're trying to reduce that. So it's sort of a separate concern, but again, it all comes back to just the health of our province and our population.
Oh, Jillian, yeah, no, it all fits together for sure. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'll put this to the panel here as well, but I appreciate your comments.
Thanks so much.
All right, Jillian Croak there, folks. I mean, Luke, this stuff you're talking about off the top. Yeah.
Safe streets, walkable neighborhoods. These are just budget priorities. It's not necessarily like, it's hard. That's a brand new neighborhood. It's not, maybe 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And I mean, why is it stranded out there? Why is Airport Heights stranded out there? It's really hard to get out of these neighborhoods without a car.
There's no sidewalk up to Airport Heights.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And apparently the city said they didn't think anyone would walk there. Well, they are. This isn't. It's so frustrating. And it's a question of zoning. They could have zoned. There was brand new, green space development that could have been done completely differently. The development could have been leveraged in a way that, you could have said, okay, we're going to have a walking trail here. We're going to have bike lanes here. We're going to have curb extensions and these things that make crossing the street safer. Narrower roads that mean that cars drive slower. These are all things that I hope we're doing in the next phase, but boy, we've got a lot of work to do to retrofit all these neighborhoods that don't have any of those.
Yeah, things that could have been baked in the beginning, right?
Correct,
like if you sit down in the beginning and say, okay, here's the plan for the bike, this and that and the other thing, as opposed to like, oh, we don't have any of these things that you kind of want, so let's go and put them in afterwards.
And it's a fight. Like if you see a kid, trying to cross the street and as a parent, these are very unsafe conditions all over the town. Something really seemed to have cracked in drivers since COVID. And, if you know it's unsafe and you approach the city of St. John's to fix it, I mean, it's an uphill battle. I submitted a petition to council in the winter about crossings on Prescott Street and Gower. Gower is not marked, if you're crossing Prescott. I was next to a couple the other day who are obviously not from here, and they're like looking like, how do we cross? How do we get cars to stop? And I was kind of like, you got to just kick your foot out a bit and see what happens.
Yeah.
And, so getting these things added in, they're like amenities or like quality of life issues, and they're public safety issues. But getting them added in after the fact, man, that's so hard. The process is awful.
Audrey, Yolande?
Yeah, I was going to just jump in and say, the crosswalk we use most frequently is the crosswalk on Allendale crossing over to the Arts and Culture Center. We've written to the city about this. In the winter, the metal button freezes up, so you actually can't press it to make the light go red, and then try getting across there if the light is red. And then multiple times in a week, I see people run that red light. So I take my son, we walk to childcare, we cross at that intersection, and there are people running that red light constantly. Not to mention the fact that twice in the last week, we've been crossing this crosswalk, trying to get onto the sidewalk, and there's been an e-bike driving fast down the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So we actually had to wait in the street to let this e-bike go by. And oh yes, I yelled after him.
Yeah.
So whoever that was, please stay off the sidewalk.
Ironically, right? They're on the sidewalk because they don't feel the street is safe, but they pushed you onto the street.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Audrey, any thoughts?
I think two words bounce out at me through all of this conversation right now. One is vision. I think if we were better able to, plant vision for what things need to look like, as Luke said, going back and trying to retrofit after the fact is, very, very difficult. And the other thing, I think, is quality. When I hear Jillian speak about the overcrowding and all the issues in just one school that she's speaking of right now, it's the quality of programming, the quality of life, the quality of, if we don't address these things now, then what does that look like in the future for students who are going to move through the system over the next couple of years? Like, we're talking about huge things that have massive effect on folks.
And just to underline something here, as we talk about the municipal elections that are coming, the provincial election that is coming, all these issues, these are things for folks, when someone's knocking on your door, these are the conversations to be having, right? To be asking about overcrowding in schools, or why the button it gets frozen, and like why there's not planning beforehand for Kenmount Terrace or other places, or anywhere else across Newfoundland and Labrador for communities. Joining us on the line right now, we have Patricia Edwards, Grand Falls, Windsor. Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Thanks for calling. So thoughts for today?
Well, I have quite a few, so I'll try to condense it.
All right.
I'm a bit emotional now when I heard the conversation about education, because I am a grandmother of a sweet little 4-year-old autistic boy. And last September, we had a call from the daycare saying that there is an opening now. You go on a waiting list. So we were all excited. We got him ready, took his pictures. And before lunchtime, we got a call saying, come and take him. He needs a worker, assistant to be with him, so he can't come back. Okay?
Yeah, go.
So I said, okay, so let me see, how bad is this? So I went around to the majority of daycares in Grand Falls, Windsor, to discover, like, for example, at the Wives, there's 200 children on the waiting list. And in that daycare, and there's quite a few children at the Wives, quite a few children in the daycare, preschool, whatever, not one of them are autistic. And I asked that question, or that require help, let's say. And then I went to another daycare, and they said, no, we don't have anyone, but we have a few that are red flagged. And I said, what does that mean? Well, that means that they may need help, but the chances are of him getting any help or anyone is next to impossible. Because the daycare, first of all, has to apply for a ratio enhancement worker. And apparently they're scarce as hen's teeth, and the government is very, very reluctant to put the money forward for these workers. So they're impossible to get. So that's the majority of what's happening to the daycares here in central Newfoundland. So when they talk about inclusion, it doesn't mean children who are different.
So what does this mean for your grandchild and your family?
It means that my child is not going to have the same experiences that other children, like when you go out the door and drop your child off at a daycare. My child, I'm 70 years old, my husband, and we are responsible full time, because the parents have to work, taking care of this wonderful little child. But that child is not getting what he needs. He needs socialization. He needs interaction. He needs help. He needs guidance. And he's never going to get that.
Let me bring the panel into this as well while you're still on the line. Any thoughts on what Patricia's saying? Yolanda?
I definitely have thoughts, and I'm sure you
I
probably
figured
do.
I figured you did, so this is why I wanted Patricia to stay.
So I've been a co-founder and co-lead of the parent group Advocates for Building Childcare Capacity and supporting ECEs in Newfoundland and Labrador, and we've heard a lot from parents who have had similar experiences because their children have exceptionalities and can't find support in childcare. That is why for this provincial election, we have a list of questions to ask about childcare to every candidate. And question number 3 is, how will you make sure early learning and childcare in our province is high quality, inclusive, and affordable, and not just about adding more spaces, right? Because it's about making sure that all children can benefit from early learning opportunities. I did just want to say one of the things I've really learned from working with David Philpott, who's an expert on inclusive education, is the importance of training and inclusion for all people that are on the floor. So it's a difficult burden on a single inclusion worker to be responsible for all the children that have exceptionalities. And so it is also really important to provide opportunities for for professional development for all early childhood educators. And I know at the childcare center my son attends this year, they had a PD day, a professional development day, where they were closed and they were learning and introducing a new form of assisted learning device. So.
But the thing is that I was told by one director of the daycare that they've tried for assistant workers, and the government is not giving them the money to get them. Now, can you explain that to me? That's directly from a director of a daycare, a big daycare, saying to me, Trish, we cannot get the money from the government for us to hire. We have the material, we have the facilities, we have everything we need, but we can't get the money.
Yeah, and if that's the case, that's outrageous. I can't really speak for sort of where the government money is, because
I'm so emotional. That's why I'm so emotional. I heard it from people for example, when I was talking to, I'm a former substitute teacher. My husband is a retired teacher, and we know the value of an education. Imagine a child. There's children home. If you go to the Autism of Newfoundland website and look at all the parents that are calling, I just got a call from the school. They're sending my child home. They don't have anybody to watch him. I am terrified. He will not be prepared for school. He will not be able to go to school if this is the case, because they cut the number of student assistants. It's not that they can't get them. It's that they're cutting funding.
Now, Audrey, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, this is my world. So
yeah, exactly.
My heart aches, Patricia. I got to be honest, because as a parent, I can totally relate to what you're saying. As an ECE, I want to say this. I use the term vision and quality. So government made strides in providing spaces. But in my opinion, it was narrow-sighted, because that's only one aspect. You're bringing people into the space, into the childcare space, who need the education, who need to have the idea behind quality programming, and who need to have the inclusive practice. And they need resources and they need support. So, ticking off boxes to say we've created 600 and some odd spaces across the province is wonderful. That's great. That will help 600 families. But what else do those families need in order to have the quality of programming that they should have access to? And I think Patricia just highlighted every piece of that.
And not only that, but the parents who do not have children who are autistic, because I was a teacher, and who are children that are in the school or preschool. Now, it's not fair to those children if they are in the classroom disrupting or whatever. I don't know sometimes if inclusion is just a cheaper form of taking care of the problem. Throw them into a regular classroom, not give them any help, and then send them home.
Patricia Edwards, thank you for this. We've got another parent on the line who I think will take the baton from you and continue this discussion. I appreciate you getting in touch. I'm so sorry for what you're going through.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye. Patricia
Edwards there, Grand Falls, Windsor. Mike Broadbent is on the line from Corner Brook. Hi, Mike.
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing okay. Your thoughts on? Well, give us an introduction of yourself, and we'll kind of dig into some stuff.
Sure. My name is Mike Broadbent, as you mentioned, and while I'm a teacher at a high school in Newfoundland, I do need to mention that anything I might express here this afternoon does not represent the opinion of NL schools.
No, this is your dad
in any shape or form. Yeah, exactly. I have two kids. One is in grade 12, and he would be what I'll describe as neurotypical. And I have a 9-year-old who's in grade 4, and he is the only person in Newfoundland, the 88th in the world, and I think he was the 2nd in Canada, but I think there are some more now, who has been diagnosed with Pira syndrome. And that you can kind of try to best sum it up as what medical professionals usually refer to as a global delay. So he is nonverbal. He can understand far more than he can communicate. He needs assistance with pretty much everything: walking, feeding, bathrooming, and anything like that. So yeah, he's the sweetest little guy, but he definitely has changed our lives completely. So I guess when we first started to chat about chatting with you guys here today, as far as I understand it, we're kind of looking at I guess issues that we think should be on the political platforms of the various candidates.
Yeah.
So I think a good starting point for a lot of candidates, if we're looking at kids specifically, but people in general with complex, medically complex needs, the By a Thread document that came out about a year ago, I believe, is a good starting point. So that was basically a in-depth survey with a number of families who are navigating situations similar to ours, and one of the big points that they make is the difficulty in navigating potential supports, such as respite hours or, student assistance, to piggyback on Patricia's point, which I'll hopefully touch on here in a minute. So to expand on that document, while we are eternally grateful for the supports that have been provided by the community sports organization, it comes at multiple costs. The first one is financial. So for my wife and I to be able to go to work every day, we are expected to pay $800 a month as a client contribution. So that's not for respite per se. That's basically so someone can make sure Obi gets to school and gets picked up, and oftentimes he might have to get picked up early because if something happens at school, and he needs to come home and get changed, or if he's tired or what have you. So that's $800 a month until Obi is 18, when he's of adult age, and then they base the contribution on his salary, which will be zero. And of course, that's a heavy enough statement just there to say your 9-year-old's adult salary is going to be non-existent. But just to kind of zag away from that for a second, we're basically talking, getting close to $200,000 for his childhood so we can go to work.
Right.
So in a country like Canada, a province like Newfoundland, to me, that does make a lot of sense. And it doesn't include any of the other financial responsibilities that come with raising a child with medical complexities. For example, we're currently navigating how we're going to finance Obi's new $5,000 wheelchair. So that will be the first cost. And I guess to elaborate on that a little tiny bit, and I'll try to be brief, it kind of blends into the next cost, which is, your mental health. And so we can appeal that $800 a month calculation, and we have done so multiple times, but it's always denied. And the appeal process in itself is beyond humbling, if not humiliating. It's called applying for hardship. And we have to turn our complete set of financial information over to a stranger to judge if we are eligible to pay less each month. So I consider this to be to be a disability tax. My wife and I are two working professionals. We have 6 degrees between us. Our newest vehicle, we live a fairly modest life. Our newest vehicle is 10 years old. And we operate 2 small businesses to try and catch up. And then on top of all that, we have to claim that we are in a position of hardship, just so we don't have to pay this $800 a month. And even then, it's unsuccessful. So to kind of continue on with the, the mental aspect of that, nobody, I don't know if it's changed since Obi was born, but nobody shows up at our door and says, hey, here's all the sports that are offered to you. We had we eventually got to a breaking point where we said, okay, there got to be something out there. And we contacted our MHA, who pointed us in the right direction. So even just kind of, I guess, getting started in seeing what might potentially be out there is tangly at best. And then with the mental aspect of it, the mental health aspect of it, our lives are really heavy, and Obi is the most beautiful soul you can meet, and I'm beyond proud to be his dad, but it's difficult to express the additional weight that comes with his medical complexities. And it's beyond the scope of the discussion here to wade through the minutia of all that comes with raising a child like Obi. But the closest comparison I can give to, say, parents of neurotypical children will be if you can try to pause for a moment and think about what your life was like before you had kids, meaning the freedom, probably more disposable income, most likely better sleep, more time for self-care, all of that. So you can kind of picture that for a second, and then think of how things changed almost entirely when you had kids. That's similar to raising a child with exceptionalities compared to a neurotypical child. And that's the closest comparison I can kind of come up with, because it's really difficult to describe what our lives entail. And we have, as I mentioned, a child that is neurotypical, and he was 7 when Obi was born. So, not that everybody's parenting experience of neurotypical children is the same, but, we have a general idea of what that experience is like. And raising a kid with special needs is different altogether. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for our system to do a more efficient job of supporting parents. Oftentimes when discussions are taking place like we are having right now or on social media, you might be talking about, student assistance or respite care or what have you. A lot of people comment that parents need to speak up. What's often, understandably overlooked is that we have been. For example, last year alone, my wife and I had no less than a dozen meetings with officials from the school administration level up to and including the Minister of Education. And there was only temporary change. And magnifying that issue is that parents are the ones who have to advocate, but we generally have the fewest resources with which to do it. We're chronically underslept and overstretched. An example of the impact of that is the number I keep coming across with this stat is the separation rate of parents in our situation is roughly 80%.
Wow.
8 out of 10. And so for my wife and I, we've been fortunate that our parenting experience has brought us probably closer together than anything else. But we can definitely appreciate how it would have the opposite effect more often than not. So I don't think, campaigning on accessibility and respite care and all that sort of thing necessarily wins any elections. It's a pretty niche category. I know we're kind of in the minority there, but I do feel it needs to be a part of people's mandate. Because otherwise it's just nothing's going to change. And I think beyond the most basic supports, we need to focus on how we can enable these kids to thrive. There should be a focus on providing teaching and learning assistance and more IRT positions. There needs to be some sort of post-secondary education for them. My understanding is once they turn 21, they then have to graduate from the school system, but as far as we know, there's nothing for them to do then.
Right.
So that's a lot of life left to live, at that point.
Mike, I want to take. There's a lot to unpack with the panel. Only a few minutes left, so I do want to say any just final closing thought here before I bring it back to the panel. And I really appreciate you coming on to talk about, because like we started the show talking about how there are folks who sometimes, like with the federal election, seem to be almost one issue, right? Tariffs was the big thing, but then when we have this discussion today. There's lots of different issues, obviously, that need attention, including everything you're laying out with you and your family and parents and advocating. So any final thought before we let you go?
A real quick final thought, and it's a hard zag, is I don't like to bring up problems without potential suggestions for a solution. And it relates to our healthcare system, so it's completely different, and I'll cap it pretty quick here, but our system is so reactive and not preventative, and 40% of our budget goes to healthcare, and roughly 40% of Newfoundland's adult population is obese or overweight, and there's so many health conditions tied to unhealthy lifestyles. So I think I have some details, but I obviously won't get into them now, but I think if there were measures taken to kind of set people up to be able to have a more healthy lifestyle over time, the healthcare burden costs would lower, and then we might free up some budget, flexibility there somewhere. But anyway, sorry, I know I've been talking nonstop, but I know time was short, and just trying to get the point across. Yeah.
No. You spoke really well, Mike, and a lot of great things that you brought up, really important things. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Mike Broadbent there, Corner Brook. All right, parents in here. Mike, there's a lot there. Luke, what are your thoughts on some of, not to pick on you, but I saw like every parent here was, nodding their head when Mike was talking. What stood out to you? Oh,
just such a difficult situation. Yeah. And, you really see these people at the margins falling through the cracks, right? Yeah. It's like the canary in the coal mine. I can't speak to the specific inclusion issue. I'm vaguely familiar with it, but my heart goes out for sure. I could just briefly say something about the last point he made, which is about our health, and to me, I connect that to walkable neighborhoods, and we're not building for those, we're not designing for those, and I mean the provincial government too, and how often are we getting out of our car in this province and the cities and towns that we live in? We need to think hard about that. And I think there was a report out of one a few years ago that said, even a small improvement in public transportation, or will get people more likely to step out and make it easier for them to get around town, not stepping in the car every single time. But,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yolande?
Yeah, just that, parents' voices have a lot of power. That's something I've really learned from doing childcare advocacy for the last several years. And it does sometimes feel like nothing's happening.
Yeah, like you're screaming into a void sometimes.
Our voices do travel,
right?
They do. So it is, I totally appreciate this comment about being overstretched and underslept. So just thanks to the caller for calling in.
Audrey?
I would have to say the same. The voice piece, I think, is what stands out to me. I mean, we're sitting here today talking about the quality of all of these factors, and we can't be quiet. So we need conversations that happen. We need to show up. We need to keep reminding governments of what the accountability practices need to look like. And, families are hurting in so many capacities these days. And what can we do to improve the quality of life for people?
So then in the final minute or two that we have left, what, with these campaigns, the two levels of campaigns happening, where are you going to be focusing your time, and how do you kind of process that? Is it just because obviously your folks were involved, right? And you speak out, and you're here doing radio things. But what do you do for your own personal, how do I figure out how to vote or who to vote for, and who's speaking to me for candidates? What will the next few weeks be like for yourselves, and whether it's your media diet or you're going to different things, or if you're so busy that you can't because you're parents, how do you do it all for keeping track of where you want your vote to go?
On a municipal level, it's easy to meet these people.
Yeah.
They are your neighbors.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the Ward 2 just debate tonight, and that's happening downtown St. John's.
All right.
So, you can do this. A lot of people can get in there. I definitely encourage people to talk to them now before they get in.
Yeah.
See what they're about.
Yolande?
Yeah, I think just being prepared to, when people come to your door, to talk about the issues that are important to you, not being kind of caught off guard, what do I do? Childcare Now, Newfoundland and Labrador, we have a question sheet. You can, if you're interested in talking to candidates about childcare, you can download our question sheet from our Instagram and our Facebook. Easy to find us through Childcare Now, Newfoundland and Labrador, and just put it near your door. And that's what I'm going to be doing. And I did that during the federal election and had some really interesting interactions at the door. So,
all right, Audrey?
My avenue is email. So when I have a thought, I put it in writing and I send it off to where it needs to go. And I've been pretty comfortable in getting responses. So I think, I live rural Newfoundland, so I'm not always in the area of getting somebody to knock on my door. So I just put it in writing.
All right. Thanks for this. I appreciate it. All right, folks, that is it for today's show. So today was a parent panel on discussions of multiple levels of elections and politics and all that. If you have thoughts for us, the signal at cbc.ca. Tomorrow, we're focusing squarely on municipal elections. With them coming up, we've gathered some candidates running for mayor in select communities across the province to pitch for your vote. Each mayor will get 2 minutes to give you their best pitch, and we've got folks running right across Newfoundland and Labrador. Don't miss it tomorrow. Cheers.